Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. How are you guys? Happy Saturday, or is it Sunday in your area? Happy Saturday. How are you guys doing? How are you guys? How are you doing this afternoon? Well, it is morning my time, no, it's afternoon my time, so depending on your location where you are. Um, Martinez, I was discussing with you offline. You were asking me, describing what is going on with your finger, and then I told you you are having what is called triggered finger. So let's continue where we stopped because I was discussing with you off air, and then you were describing to me your situation with your your fingers, and I told you that that is what is called triggered fingers. So I'm going to expatiate more on what is called, or does diabetics lead to what is called triggered fingers? Some of you might mistake it for arthritis. Okay, well, they are similar. They have the same similarities in terms of tendons and the inflammation that have to come with it. But when you are diagnosed properly and you're a diabetic, then it could be diagnosed as a triggered fingers. But the similarity between arthritis and also with the triggered fingers are similar because of both the inflammation and the tendons that are involved. So what you have is what is called triggered fingers. Is what you have. Okay, what you have is called triggered fingers. If battling with diabetics. All right. So we're going to continue from where we stop here. And if you have more question, send it to my WhatsApp or put it in the comment section. Okay. Yeah. You can watch it on YouTube, TikTok, or the Facebooks. Okay. The YouTube, my YouTube is back. So we're going to discuss more or shed more light on what is called diabetes. Does diabetes lead to trigger fingers? So you don't misdiagnose it as an arthritis, when in fact what you have is what's called trigger fingers due to the situation of what? Your diabetic status. So I'm going to give you guys things to look out for when you're having triggered fingers. It is not arthritis. You might be treating arthritis, but they're doing something different. They have the same similarities or coloration in terms of the inflammation of the cells and the nerves and also the tendons. But actually, if you're a diabetic, okay, then you might be experiencing trigger fingers, as I was discussing with Martinez off the line. Okay, I was discussing with Martinez off the line, and then I eventually said what you're having is what is called triggered fingers. All right, so let's see, make sure everything is okay before we start. So the question is, does diabetics lead to what is called triggered fingers? Okay, does it lead to what is called triggered fingers? Let's, I'm going to describe it in a brief sentence. Now, when you are having it with the triggered fingers, it's also a complication of diabetics. Okay, it is what is called part of the complications of dealing with diabetics. If you have not controlled diabetics, or you're not able to control your diabetic situation properly, it's going to lead you to have what's called triggered fingers, and it's a complication of what? Diabetics. So what is it? Why do we call it triggered fingers? Why is it not arthritis? it is not arthritis. It might be diagnosed as arthritis, while what you have is one of the complications of diabetes. I don't know if you have any of you that has an elderly parent at home in the village that is battling with diabetes and they are old. Then if you look at their fingers, you can see their fingers are not straight anymore. Some of their fingers, they cannot even raise it beyond this point. They can't even raise it beyond this point. Their fingers are like this, or it is bent, okay? Or they find it very difficult to grab something because their fingers has no flexibility in it, okay? The fingers has no what? Flexibility in it. So their finger is either bent, okay, either bent, they cannot stretch it properly, and it is very painful, or they cannot use their hands to grab things properly. If you have an elderly parent back home in the village, all right? If you have an elderly parent back home in the village, okay, that is dealing with diabetes. Sometimes you could also see it in their leg. What I call it, disfiguration of your legs or your toes. Okay, so if you are diabetics, okay, and you are having pains in your tendons or there's an inflammation within your fingertips or the joints, you might mistake it to be arthritis, but in fact it is not arthritis. It might be what is called diabetes triggered fingers, and it's a complication of a complication of diabetics. All right. Now, yes, diabetes can lead to a long-term complications known as triggered fingers. And what it is? Okay, this is a result of inflammation in the tendons that enable you to flex and bend your fingers and thumbs. So if there's any hindrance that you are not able to bend your fingers, okay, or stretch it, or your thumbs, okay, anytime you want to bend it or stretch it, you feel a kind of excruciating pains, okay, you are not able to flex your fingers or hold something with it, you might mistaken it to be what? Arthritis. But in fact, you are dealing with what we call diabetes triggered fingers, and it's a complication of diabetics. So if you have an elderly parent back home, you could see that they are not able, in their old ages, 70s, 80s, you could see that they are not able to, their fingers is bent, their fingers are not straight, they won't be able to stretch it beyond this limit. Okay, most of their fingers, or 3 of their fingers can be stretched, but 2 cannot be stretched. It depends how damaged the tendons are, and it has to also involve the nerves. Okay, so when you see such situations, they are dealing with what is called diabetes triggered fingers. All right, so it's a complication of diabetes. So diabetes can lead to a long-term complication. Please, if you can't hear me properly, let me know on the comment section. All right, so diabetes can lead you to these long-term complications, or what we call triggered fingers. It's as a result of inflammation in the tendons that enable you to flex your muscles, the joints, their tendons, their cartilages. All right, bend your fingers and thumbs. So if you're not able to bend your fingers and thumbs, and there's an inflammation, then that is what is called your body what we call diabetes triggered fingers, and that can be painful and make it difficult to move, strengthen, or use your fingers properly. Now, one thing you have to understand before you start having that visible complication of diabetes triggered fingers, before you start having those visible complications, you can even see in your naked eyes that your fingers cannot bend, cannot straighten up, they are bent. Before you start seeing it, it means the internal nerves of those areas have been damaged. So by the time you start experiencing the physical symptoms of those triggered fingers, that you're not able to flex your fingers, okay, or raise it to a certain limit, it means the internal nerves of those areas have been damaged. And that is why that I've said it several times to all of you dealing with diabetics, that when you're dealing with diabetics, it comes with various complications, and it differs from individuals to individuals. Now, before you start losing your eyesight, before you go blind, it means at the background, the nerves connecting the retina, okay, the medulla, the nerves that is connecting those tissues have been completely damaged, that blood cannot flow into these areas. Nerves are the tiny vessels that blood emptied into. Like the blood that carries most of the oxygens and the nutrient that you need for your coexistence, okay, comes from the larger vessels of the blood vessels, and then empty them into the nerves. The nerves is what deliver the final nutrient to the targeted areas. So when those nerves are completely damaged, it means blood is not flowing to those nerves. Nutrients are not getting into those areas. And that's how degeneration start coming, and then start losing your eyesight slowly, slowly until you lose your eyesight. It means the internal nerves in those areas have been completely damaged. Okay? So before you start having all those, sorry, I have to do something here. So by the time you start having those visible symptoms of complication, it means at the background, those nerves have been completely damaged. So eventually when you lose your eyesight, you have a total vision loss or partial vision loss. It means the nerves connecting to the retina, there's a detachment. Blood is not getting to the nerves. Okay, so there's a dryness in those areas, and that's where you start having those medullary symptoms start coming up. And then you start losing your eyesight because the nerves have been completely damaged. The same thing you have to do with your retina. That's what we call retinopathy in diabetics. So when you talk about retinopathy, we're talking about your eyesight. The neuropathy, we're talking about your feet. You see, one people, they have to amputate their feet in order to save their life. It means the nerves in those areas have been completely damaged. Blood is not flowing to those areas. And when you have wound in those areas, it's not going to heal properly. There's an infection that leads to amputations. Okay? The same thing with your nephropathy, we're talking about kidneys. Okay? So when the nerves in those areas have been damaged, it means you have to go into dialysis and then look for a donor to give you kidneys. So diabetes have to do with damaging the nerves that connect to the major organs. And that's why we advise everybody battling with diabetes to make sure they control their sugar levels at all times. Once your sugar levels are stable at all times, you are avoiding those complications. Okay, you are avoiding those complications. But if you allow your sugar levels to persistently high all the time, it means the long run you are damaging those nerves. As long as your sugar levels are high consistently, you are gradually damaging those nerves. That's why you wake up one day, you cannot even see anymore. You wake up one day, if you're a woman, you lose appetite for sex. You don't have any libido because the nerves in those areas have been completely damaged. If you're a man, you lose an erection because the nerves in those areas have been damaged. Or you have neuropathy or nephropathy. There are different kinds of complications. Or you have this diabetic finger fingers where you're having an inflammation of the tendons and it becomes very painful. So it is advised at all times to make sure that make sure you control your sugar levels at all times to avoid all these complications. Okay, so diabetes can lead to a long-term complications known as trigger fingers, and that has to do as a result of inflammation of the tendons that allow you to flex your fingers and then the thumbs, and it can be very painful and difficult to move or straighten your fingers. Okay, that is what is called. Let me look at what is going on in YouTube. Titus, how are you? Hi. At Elo Gomez, hi. Tango, how are you? At Luna, hi, how are you doing? Okay, this I can see here. Let me see what is going on the TikTok. There are a lot on TikTok. I acknowledge everybody on TikTok. The list is too much. I'm able to mention all of them, but I acknowledge those that are watching or who have joined the program. Okay, there are a lot, so I'm able to mention their names one after the other, but I acknowledge your presence here. The list is, so all of you on TikTok, I acknowledge your presence. All right, keep watching and let's see. If you have any question, ask your questions. All right. Let's see. Okay. All right. So, what am I trying to say here? So people with diabetics, okay, people with diabetics who experience this stiffness in their finger may have a triggered fingers. It might not be arthritis. But I advise you, if you are having, the best way to know what is actually is the issue with your fingers is to go for doctor's analysis, diagnosis, to make sure they rule certain things out, that okay, for sure it is not arthritis, you're having a triggered fingers, and especially if you're a diabetic. 80% of the time, if you're a diabetic, you'll have this situation, it's a diabetes triggered fingers. And also, what you have to understand also is that if you fail to control your sugar levels, arthritis can come in different forms in terms of inflammation of the nerves. Now, inflammation of the nerves, okay, when we talk about the inflammation of the nerves, hold on, I have to respond to this, just a minute. So I have to respond, just I'll be back, let me. I've dealt with it. So let's talk about what is inflammation of the nerves, because people don't understand when you have an inflammation or what we call neurotics. Inflammation of the nerves, inflammation or neurotics. The medical name of it is called neurotics. That is Neuritis. It's called neurotics, or we call it inflammation. Now, what is that inflammation? Remember, the brain controls every part of your system. It sends signals. The brain communicates with other part of the body through signals. Say, for instance, you're not a diabetic, or for instance, you're a healthy person and you keep eating too much carbs, and then your sugar level goes beyond the above levels. As soon as your sugar level creep up beyond the normal level, the brain sends a signal to the pancreas to send some insulin to the blood to get rid of those excess glucose levels into the cells where they are needed. So the brain communicates with other part of the body through signals. So the brain monitors every other part of the organs, and when something is abnormal, your brain is going to send a signal. That's when you start feeling symptoms of headache, or kind of nauseousness, or kind of jittery. It means something is wrong with your system. So the brain communicates with other part of the body through signals. An example is that when your sugar level creeps up above the normal level, the brain sends a signal to the pancreas to release insulin. The insulin to get rid of those excess glucose level into the cells where they are needed and convert to as an energy. Now, what about inflammation or neurotics? Now, inflammation is the swelling and irritation of what? One of the nerves. So when the nerve swells beyond the degree or the centimeter it is required to stay, okay, then you have what's called inflammation. Okay, the swelling and the irritation. So the nerves swell because the nerves are these tiny small vessels. The larger blood vessels carry most of the nutrient from when the heart pumps the blood, so there's a circulation. So the larger vessels carry the blood from the heart and with the nutrient loaded in it to all part of the organs. And when they are getting to the destination where they are needed, they are emptied into the smaller blood vessels, which are the nerves. The nerves is what transport all the nutrient to the final place where they are needed. So that is why you have to guard your nerves properly. So when those nerves are completely damaged, it means the blood is going to pump nutrients. Blood is going to carry everything to where it's supposed to empty into the nerve and see that the nerves are not functioning. It means those nutrients cannot get through. And when they can't get through, that part of organ will start having problem. And that's what comes about the complications. So when there's a swelling and irritation of one of the nerves, what happens? It disrupts the signals that are coming from the brain, okay, between the brain and the body. Now, causing pain and then all this numbness, tingling of your fingers or your feet, and also can, cause weakness. So when the brain cannot communicate with other part of the body through signals, because the irritation and the painfulness or the swelling of the nerves, that's what we call inflammation. Because the brain is trying to communicate with the other part of the body, but they can't get through, the signal can't get through because of the swelling of those nerves and also the irritation of those nerves. And that's why you start having those numbness, tinglings, or burning sensations in your feet and your hands. So often from injury, infection can also disrupt the way the body or the brain sends signals to that particular part of the body. So that is what we call inflammation or neurotics. When there's a swelling in one of the nerves and accompanied by irritation, that affects the way the brain sends signals to that particular part of the body, thereby causing you what is called irritation, those tingliness, numbness, or burning sensations in and around your feet. Okay? So, somebody asked me a question here. Hold on, let me see what it is. Yes, I've explained it in my intro. Okay, I did explain it in my intro that there are similarities between arthritis. Remember, we have different types of arthritis. So we have the peripheral arthritis and we have other type of arthritis. Now, there are similarities with triggered fingers and arthritis because of it has to do with inflammation, the tendons. Now, that's when you're having those triggered fingers, it can appear as what? It can appear as what? You have what is called the arthritis. Okay? I'm trying to understand what you are. I'm trying to make sense what you are asking me here. No, the stenosis, tendonitis, that's a medical name because when you bring those medical names, they are the same thing with trigger fingers. They are the same thing with trigger fingers. I've said it in this page. I try to avoid as much as you can. See, when you start going to medical terms, you get confused. Others get confused. That's why I rarely use medical terms here. I use a simple language that you can understand. What you are referring to, according to your report, you said you are diagnosed as stenizing tendinitis. It's the same thing as what? Triggered fingers. So maybe the clinic or the hospital didn't use the word triggered fingers. So the stenizing, tendinitis is the medical name of the same thing as triggered fingers. So if the doctor or the nurse say you have that tendinitis, tendinitis, that is the same thing as what? Triggered fingers. So it means the diagnosis is correct. You are not having arthritis. So that means that is not arthritis. So if that is what is showing in your result, stenosis tendinitis, it means you have triggered fingers. Those are the medical terms of it. And they come with a unique different types of symptoms, different from arthritis. We're going to go into that later, okay? So so what we have is triggered fingers. So because they did not write triggered fingers, they use the medical terms, it's the same thing. Okay? Stenosis tendinitis is the same thing as triggered fingers. All right? So let's keep going. Somebody is asking me, what are tendons? Good question. What are tendons? Can somebody ask me, somebody's asking me, what are tendons? Okay. Now, tendons are basically, let me use the word, I will use rubber, let me use the word ropes. Okay. Tendons are basically ropes because your finger have to flex. I'm not going to use rubber because of the elasticity of it. Let me use the word ropes. So tendons are basically like ropes, okay, that move and pull your fingers down into a fixed, okay, because of the flexing, okay. They are like rope that pull, okay? That move and pull your fingers down to the fist. You see like this? They move and then they pull. They move and then they pull back to your fist. Okay? They move and they pull. They move and they pull back to your fist. Those tendons enter a very narrow tunnel at the base of each finger. And this tunnel functions much like a pulley system. Okay? They release, they pull it towards your feet. They release it, they pull it towards your feet. So there is, I don't know if you know what, if those that did physics in terms of pulley systems, there's a tunnel and there's a cable that goes into that tunnel. And that cable is, when you pull it, okay, it pulls that object towards you. And when you release that pulley system, it releases the object out again. So that's how it works. Like your finger, see how my finger is moving? It releases, it pulls back towards the feet. It releases, it pulls, but that is what the movement, that's what tendons do. Okay, they are like ropes that move and pull your finger down into your feet. F-I-S-T. Okay, so that is what tendons are. Now, without this tunnel-like system, the tendons on your finger would actually pull away, and what? When they pull away and bow from your fingers instead of triggering what against them, they have to go through those tunnels. In those tunnels, there are a lot of nutrients that greases those pulley systems that allow your fingers to work properly. So that is why you have to make sure you guide against diabetes complications damaging the nerves. The nerves are the smaller blood vessels that the larger blood vessels empty their nutrient into and then get them to the final destinations. So anything that damages the nerves, it means when the larger blood vessels come with those nutrients, they cannot empty their nutrient into the smaller blood vessels, which are the nerves. And because there's no fluid or any nutrient getting to the final destination where they are needed, you start having complications. That's how your nerves start damaging. Now, one thing you have to understand, when you damage your nerves, you cannot recreate it. Blood vessels can be recreated. Blood vessels can be recreated. So if, for instance, if these blood vessels here damage, you can recreate another blood vessel by itself. Sometimes they can recreate another channel by themselves. But nerves are very difficult. They are very tiny cells of the body that you cannot even see with your naked eyes. And that is why it is very, very important if you're a diabetic to make sure you guard against damaging your nerves and make sure you control your blood vessels at all times to avoid the complications of diabetics. Okay? So that is what we call triggered fingers. Now, let me go to so why are people with diabetes more at risk of triggered fingers? So if you're a diabetes, you are at risk of many health issues. Once you become diabetics, you are at risk of many health issues. Once you become what? Diabetics. So why are people with diabetes at risk of triggered fingers? It has to do with what? Your lifestyle, okay, and how you are managing your blood sugar levels. Now, people with diabetes are more likely to develop triggered fingers than those without condition, and the symptoms may be what? Severe. Okay? So, why? You're asking me the question and you're providing the answer, which is okay. So, you're making the job more easy for me. Yes, women at birth may be more likely than men to develop triggered fingers. Yes, you are right. Now, he said again, trigger finger develop most commonly in your 40s and 50s, but can develop earlier. You're also equally right on this. So, you are the judge and the prosecutor. Now, the order of fingers most commonly affected is the ring finger, thumb, middle finger, pointer, or the index, and also the pinky fingers. Those are the areas that are affected mostly if you are battling with trigger fingers. So you made my job easy by providing the answer, which is okay. Now, one thing you have to understand when you're battling with trigger fingers is people with other conditions may also be more at risk of developing what is called triggered fingers. So for instance, if you have what is called carpal tunnel syndromes, I think I've discussed about that issue, carpal tunnel syndromes, and again, you have what is called hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism, hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia. This is hypothyroidism. What that means, you are having hypo, we have hypo and hyper. Hyper means you are having overreactive thyroid. Hypo means you are having underreactive thyroid. So this is when you have an issue of hypothyroidism. Okay, which means you are having underreactive thyroid. Now it means you are not producing enough hormone to help you with other areas. Overreactive means you are producing excess hormone that more than the body needed. That's another issue. Now we have rheumatoid arthritis. Those that are battling this issue can also be at risk of developing these triggered fingers, and also we have those that have what's called renal disease. Okay, so these are some other people battling the issue that might have what's called triggered fingers. All right, so that is it. Let me see, I'm trying to figure out what. Okay. What was I discussing before? Now the next question says, does high blood sugar increases your risk? Definitely, you know the answer is yes. You must guard yourself against having too much sugar in your bloodstreams. The more you have too much sugar in your bloodstreams, the more you are having an issue of complications. So when you are a diabetic or you're a caregiver or partner with somebody that has a diabetic issue, your major job is to make sure you keep their sugar level at normal at all times. Make sure they don't exceed their normal levels. Okay, once they exceed their normal levels, then it means you're inviting trouble to yourself. So when you have too much sugar in your blood, yes, you're a higher risk of what? You are a higher risk of developing these triggered fingers. Okay, so if not clear, then what it is? Too much sugar in your bloodstreams is dangerous to your health in general. Too much sugar, and that is why you have to make sure you guide against what you eat and what you drink. Even though you're not a diabetic, but once you become diabetic, then you have to watch what you eat. That is why eating a balanced diet is critical. Exercise is critical. So whatever you eat is very important from then you become a diabetic patient. You don't eat anyhow, you don't drink anyhow, you must count your carbs. Counting your carbs come in there, amount of carb you consume come in there, eating too much carbs can now cause you a lot of problems. Okay, so it is important to guide yourself properly on what you eat and what you don't eat. What you drink, you must be very careful what you drink. Remember, the only thing that doesn't contain too much carbs or even carbs at all is water. But every other thing that you drink contains carbs in it. So even though you are not abstaining from sugar, those carbs becomes an issue to you, because once you take too much carbs, your body is going to convert those carbs into sugar, and then it's like you are recycling yourself all over again. Your medications are not working because you are consuming too much carbs. Those carbs are going to be converted into sugar and then inflate your sugar levels high again. Then it becomes hyperglycemia. So high blood sugar increases your risk of developing these triggered fingers. So it's a complication of diabetics that you have to watch at all times. Once you become diabetics, it comes with different vibes entirely. Everything about you have to change, from what you eat, what you drink, and how you live your life from onset. It's like you are battling against your life. You want to live long and be useful to yourself, you got to contain what you eat. Your lifestyle have to change totally. Everything about you have to change. because you are battling against your life. You are fighting for survival. And if you are careless, that can terminate your life even sooner or quicker because you are being careless. You're not listening to your doctor. You're not eating what they ask you not to eat. You're still living on the past. You don't give a damn. That's why you cannot live long. Okay? So it is important at all times to listen to your caregiver team. It is important at all times follow the instructions and advice of your doctors in times when it becomes a diabetes. It's going to help you properly. Even though you visit your doctor, you're at home. Don't think you're being smarter by going to eat whatever you want to eat at home because your doctor is not there. Because at the end of the day, you are the one who's going to pay the price. Okay? You are the one who is going to pay the price. So at all times, it is important to listen to your family doctor instructions on battling diabetics. Okay? On battling diabetics. It's not something I'm going to waste much time here because it's not something that I have to explain in details. Okay, so I'm advising everybody watching this video live is I'm going to round up. Okay, I'm going to round up. Everyone watching this video live is at all times make sure you follow the doctor's instructions, your caregiver team's instructions. If you're a caregiver and you have somebody in your family battling this complication, you must at all times follow the rules and regulations governing diabetes. Diabetes have a norms that you have to follow. You can't create your own separate rules. There are norms you have to follow once you're diabetes. It has a language you have to understand. Creating your own norms might be different from what your doctor advises you to do, and that's going to be detrimental to your life. So at all times, it's important to follow your doctor's guide or your nutrition guide, especially the hardest aspect of living with diabetes is managing your diet. That is the hardest aspect. Other things you can cope with. The issue why most people are finding it very difficult to manage their diabetes is what you eat and what you drink. If you be able to deal with that, understand your dieting aspect, what you're expected to eat, the quantity, the plate size, counting your carbs, then the other ones about exercising will now help you to live a normal life. But when it comes to everything, the most hardest aspect of managing diabetes is dieting. What do I eat? What quantity? What time? Am I making a mistake? Is that the right meal? Sometimes it's frustrating, irritating, bothering, and a headache. But you have to pay that price. Okay? So friends, I'm not going to waste much time on this particular topic. It's not something I'm going to waste too much time. Yes, diabetes can lead to having trigger fingers, and it's all about guiding yourself. It's a complication of diabetes. So if this is your first time coming across my page, give us a thumbs up and keep watching. That's the little I have for this Saturday morning or afternoon on this particular topic. I hope to see you guys some other times on issues dealing with diabetes. I'll respond to your questions. Those are sending me questions on the side. I'm getting there now. I'm answering those questions, and those that belong to my WhatsApp group, I'm answering your questions. So I'm going to see you guys some other times. Stay good, keep watching, share the videos, give a thumbs up, and also guide what you eat. Goodbye.